Should you buy a large dragon plush? I'm not so sure. Winston is a large dragon plush sold by PlushLife.eu. They make large cuddly plushes available to order for a limited time period. Each year, they have a new plush you can pre-order at the start of the year, and since each plush is made to order, once the order period ends, you can't order one anymore. This year, they're making Winston the Dragon, and due to some delays, the order period started on 17th of March and ends on 23rd of July. The price is €900 plus shipping and whatever import duties and taxes applies for your area. They also have a giant version that costs €2,500 plus shipping and tax. Both sizes are available in the classic Plush Life colors and in black and white with the choice between 7 different highlight colors. I managed to place the order for my classic colors normal size Winston 2 minutes after the orders were officially open, which landed me a cool number 8. Yes, these are individually numbered, but I'm not sure I like the race to be the first to order a €1,000 plush when that means you're not given the opportunity to actually read through the terms of the sale before placing the order. And you can forget about any sort of third-party review of the product. You just gotta take their word for it being good. I still ordered one. Because I've wanted a large dragon plush to cuddle with for around a decade now, and it didn't really occur to me in all that time that I could just order one. But seeing their live stream reveal, the web page, and the tweets from their Twitter convinced me that this was just the thing that I had wanted. My early order was delivered to me in Norway 3 months later on the 12th of June, and when I opened the 320-liter box with the plush in it, it evoked a sense of childhood wonder in me that I haven't experienced in many years. That magic feeling of a long-awaited dream coming true that just takes your mind out and away from all the worries of the world. A blissful joy that I honestly don't have the words to describe. I am happy that I decided to go through the effort of recording this moment because I think that in many years from now, I'll look back at that unboxing and think of all the places I brought with me my Winston to and the joy of having a big cuddly plush that started from this moment. Looking closer at Winston, my first impression was that he is big, really big. From tail to snout, he measures 2 meters, and with all the stuffing, he weighs about 8 kilograms. If you place him in a chair, he takes up all of the space for himself. He measures about 92 centimeters across the waist, and this is the normal-sized version. The giant size is the same pattern, except scaled up by a factor of 1.5. That means the lengths are 1.5 times longer. There's about twice as much area and about 3 times as much volume compared to the normal version. I didn't fancy paying €2,500 plus tax for a giant version, so all I can really say about it in this review is that it looks ginormous. A nice thing about Plush Life plushies is that they have a zipper on the back that lets you easily access the stuffing on the inside, meaning you don't have to pop a seam to do things with the stuffing or access the inside. This is genuinely great. My only comment about it is that it feels a tad too short. Had it been, say, 10 centimeters longer, it would have made working through it much more comfortable, especially if you don't have tiny hands like I do. The fur on Winston is really soft. There's no hint of any abrasive or rough spots underneath it at all, even when you squeeze and prod it hard. The only exception being the eyes, which have a rough fabric feel to them. This makes Winston really nice to hug and cuddle with. The feel of the fabric does differ a bit depending on which direction you stroke it and which patch it is. On my Winston at least, the blue fabric feels smooth and flows nicely no matter which direction I stroke it. The black fur crinkles a bit in some places when stroked towards the snout, and almost all of the white fur crinkles a lot when stroked towards the snout. But not all of it. For example, the underside of the feet crinkles, but the top side does not. I have no idea what's going on here. My best guess is that these are fabrics from different batches that behave differently due to variations in production. It's clear that my Winston didn't ship with the smoothest fabric possible, but it's also clear that they have paid attention to the orientation of the fabric, as almost all of the patches are oriented so the fur flows away from the snout, making all of it smooth and nice to stroke in a direction that feels natural. The exception to this are the fingers and toes, and the feet, which for some reason are reversed and crinkles when stroked away from the snout. I asked about the crinkling in an email to PlushLife, and they said it was normal for the fur to do that, and that it depended on the tension of the fabric. I find that explanation a little puzzling, because when I took the stuffing out, the crinkly part stayed crinkly and the soft part stayed soft. So to me, this still seems like it's due to normal variations in the production of the fabric, and that the crinkliness will differ from one plush to the next one. That's not to say this is inherently a bad thing. I hardly notice the crinkling when I'm stroking my Winston. The eyes are machine embroidered on a patch of fur. This does cause the leading edge of the eye to fold the fur under the embroidery, which combined with the orientation of the fur has the effect of looking like the fur stops before the eyes to not get in the way. Nice. This isn't perfect though, as the folding of the fur is sensitive to the orientation of the fur is laying during the embroiderment, and on my Winston this folding happens only along the top eyelid on the right eye, but on the left eye it goes along both the top and the bottom eyelid. But, well, focusing on such details is splitting hairs. Winston is a plush meant for cuddling. Yes, the seams pull fur into them, they are misaligned, uneven, asymmetric, have bumps in them and look ugly under a magnifying glass. But these things just don't matter. It's a handmade product, and having blemishes is simply the quality of being a real handmade product. You're not supposed to look up close on it. So how does Winston feel to cuddle with? Wonderful. After having been cuddling with Winston for a month, I can say he really does live up to being a cuddleable plush. I have enjoyed every moment of cuddling with him, so much so that I want to bring him with me wherever I go. While that seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do for me, my mom seems just about ready to die from social embarrassment over the mere thought of me taking my dragon plush with me out in public. Oh, never change, Mom. But just how can you transport this giant plush with you? For me at least, it seems the simplest option is to treat Winston as a person and put him in a seat of whatever passenger transportation mode of choice you use. If that is impractical or too expensive, you can pack him into a large suitcase. But if you are to do this, I highly recommend putting him inside a plastic bag like the one he was shipped with, as some people really do put the stupidest thing in their luggage, like a bag of red wine that bursts and then soaks the luggage belonging to someone else underneath it. Yes, really, I have seen this happen. Do not pack bags of liquid with you when you go travel by public transport. Just don't. I've also heard that you can use a vacuum bag, which will shrink the size much more, but I haven't tried that, nor seen anyone who do it to a plush like this. Oh, look, Winston's ready for travel. So why wouldn't I say that you should definitely get one if Winston is the most wonderful and cuddly plush I've ever had? It's because Winston has been the worst purchasing experience I've ever had, and that includes getting scammed. Admittedly, some of that pain might have been self-inflicted through putting more of my feelings into a plush than I have senses, but it was a decade-long dream I had, and a dream I cherish so much. You see, my Winston is falling apart. On the morning of the second day that I had Winston, I poked my finger into a 3 centimeter wide hole in the seam on his hip. At first I thought it was just an honest mistake. The fabric had slid out while the seamster was stitching the seams and I just hadn't noticed. But it sowed a doubt in me that maybe this wasn't the robust quality product it had been sold to me as. And that ruined my first hands-on week with Winston. That joyous and happy person you saw unboxing Winston just a day and a hole later, he was no longer the same happy person. And 6 days later, I found a second hole on the shoulder, about 1 centimeter wide, and my doubts on the quality solidified into being certain that the quality was bad. I felt that I had to find out just how bad it was. I needed to take out the stuffing and inspect every seam. I had to know for sure. Had I been delivered poor workmanship and played for a fool? And so that's what I did. And the first thing that greeted me after spending some 40 minutes taking the stuffing out was this.
This is the nostril. It's interesting that it's got like an internal passageway. Seems like a lot of effort to go for something you can barely notice from the outside. Anyway, I'm interested in the stitch work and oh, that's not a lot of seam allowance. What does it look like? About 2 millimeters from the edge of the fabric to the stitching. It's not a good look. I can't help but feel like this is gonna ravel and turn into a hole. How's the other side? Oh, it already did ravel.
I then spent 10 grueling hours measuring the seam allowance. That's the distance from the stitches to the edge of the fabric of every single seam on this plush. And what I found was so much worse than I had anticipated. Again and again and again, the stitchings simply run straight off the edge of the fabric. There were 8 spots where the stitches ran off the edge of the fabric, 12 spots where the stitches ran just 1 millimeter from the edge of the fabric. And in 3 weeks of cuddling with the plush, I had unraveled 4 holes in the seam. 4 holes! Looking at the histogram of the minimum and maximum seam allowance I measured per seam, it's evident that whoever put this together simply didn't care about making a robust plush. And I really hope I don't need to be a tailor to tell you that this is rubbish. Utter rubbish. Running stitches 2 millimeters from the edge of the fabric is not conducive to making a robust product, and there's simply no way they weren't aware of this. 1 in 5 seams have a spot on them where the stitches are 2 millimeters or closer to the edge of the fabric. Now sure, some stitches had been redone when they ran off the edge, but this accounts for less than half of the total number of stitches that ran off the edge. And nowhere had a 1 or 2 millimeter seam allowance been redone to make it robust. There were also other defects that weakened the seams of the plush, like this one where the fabric had been torn apart by the sewing machine as it made the stitches. And here's the thing. In all my time looking into the quality of plushies that PlushLife makes, I haven't seen anyone saying something bad about it at all. When I found the first hole, I contacted PlushLife via email about it, and their first response to it was like mine. The seamster had just missed a spot. They thanked me for telling them so promptly about it and offered me 2 options for getting it fixed. I could send the plush back to them and they would fix it, or I could fix it myself and get a €50 reimbursement for the trouble. I replied that I wanted to fix it myself. At that point in time, I thought it was just a mistake. I thought if I opened the plush up and inspected it, I would find all the other seams would be robustly done, and this hole was just an unlucky accident. 4 days later, on day 6 of having the plush, I found the second hole on the shoulder and sent another email notifying that I found another hole that I would fix when I got around fixing the first hole. I got no reply to this email, which is fair enough. It wasn't before 11 days later, on day 17 of having the plush, that I mustered up the courage to unstuff it and start inspecting the seams, which immediately greeted me with the discovery of the third hole on the nostril. I emailed my discovery and disappointment with the product, and I got a reply on the following day explaining that this issue with the fabric sliding out from the sewing machine, making the stitches run off the edge, was something that had happened on the first few Winston plushes they made. The factory had adapted their process to fix it for the future ones they make, and they wanted me to send the plush back unstuffed so that the factory could fix or replace the bad one they had shipped to me. And this is where we hit an impasse. You see, this plush is not just a product that can be replaced to me. This is my Winston. He is special. When I noticed there's plastic embroidered into the eye, I didn't feel bad about having a product with such a mistake in it. I laughed. I thought about the factory worker setting up the embroidery machine for the eye and getting a piece of plastic stuck in it without noticing. And every time I see and think about this, it cracks me up. Not only that, but this strip of plastic makes it look like a tear is forming in Winston's eye. When I feel down and hug my Winston, I see that tear in his eyes. I see that he cares about me, and I don't think any other Winston would evoke such emotions in me. Not only that, but the presence of 50 bad seams, 4 of which had already popped holes in them, has relaxed the way I think about this plush. I don't worry about rough handling causing seams to pop open. It doesn't matter how gentle I am. These seams are going to pop holes anyway, so I might as well not care about it. In fact, they are so bad, I feel confident in saying that had I had the fabric and patterns, I could have done a better job stitching this plush together than the factory did, and I have practically zero experience operating a sewing machine. Of course, the factory could have fixed the plush instead of replacing it, but they made this mess and thought it was fine to ship to begin with. I have no confidence in that they would actually do a proper job fixing the bad seams, or that they won't miss spots and then I'd be sending it back on a regular basis for repairs I can easily do myself. Speaking about repairing it myself, how difficult is it really to mend holes in the seams for someone like me who have barely held a needle before? Let's have a look.
And here we got one of the bad places in the stitchings. This is a point where 6 seams meet up to a point. As we can see, the stitching is ripped up. Now, I'd think when you'd make a plush that you'd avoid those high numbered poles, because this lump of fabric seems difficult to work with. Anyway, I brought some sewing thread and a set of needles from a local store. So I'm going to try it out. Look, it says it's a quality product. That must mean it's quality, right? I don't actually have any clue of what I'm doing. Just before recording this, I looked up a guide on how to sew a thread. I just made a mess, haven't I? You know what? We'll call that good enough. Alright. There's not a lot of seam allowance in this stitching here. I think I'm going to anchor it to the original stitching. This is probably not a good idea, but as I've said, I have no idea what I'm doing. To end this, I'm going to tie a knot here. Oh, well, if I can't pull it through, it's probably going to hurt. Alright. Let's have a look at what that looks like on the outside. It's fine. No one's going to notice that.
I wonder what it's like to put my hand in it. Oh. Oh, that's nice. Wait, no, go away. I'm not a furry.
I've got a snout here. So this is the right side. You can see that it's pretty close. 2 millimeters. And yeah, I'm curious as to why it would be made like this. I'm just going to illustrate this because I want you to understand what exactly they've done here. You have a snout piece that looks something like this. And then there's the nostril piece, and it's a cone shape. And to stitch these together, these two edges are brought together. And the thing is, when you're putting this on the sewing machine, they're not cooperating. This piece, it would be oriented like this. And then you have to get these two together. And here's the thing. When you have this on the sewing machine, you're gonna have a foot sitting on top of it, probably with some structure in between, and basically all of this is obstructed. And then the fabric has a fuzzy edge. It's got fur on the other side. So there's fur sticking out of this side. And that means you're gonna have a hard time knowing whether or not you have aligned these two surfaces right as you're trying to make this 180-degree turn around.
Hold up. I just want to point out that the fabric on the bottom is going to be right side up, and that means that this is just going to be a white fuzz. You wouldn't actually be able to clearly see the edge you're trying to sew on.
And that is what perplexes me. If you're making a stitching that's that hard to do, why then wouldn't you go to the extra effort to inspect what you've sewn together to make sure you actually hit the fabric? So, anyway, let's try to mend this together. Alright. I think I'm gonna try using a knot as the start. From left. Here it goes again. Alright. That almost looks like something a professional could have done.
Since I have so little experience with sewing with a sewing machine, I decided to let my mom do the repairs on the seams that could easily be done on a sewing machine. She mentioned the seam work on this plush was terrible. Can't really say I disagree, Mom. It's both fascinating and depressing to see just how little work it is to redo a bad seam on a sewing machine. Had they cared to properly check the seams when they made this, they could have redone the bad ones in no time. While I had the opportunity, I decided not to redo all of the bad seams, partly because that's a lot of work, but also because there's a part of me that thinks maybe 2 millimeters of seam allowance is enough. The factory certainly thought so, but the people experienced in sewing that I've spoken to have said that it will just ravel. But how easily will it actually do that? I question things like this, and I want to find out for sure. And I think this is a unique opportunity to do that. I have a plush with seam allowances ranging from 0 to 12 millimeters that I've fully mapped out. And I will be cuddling with it on a daily basis. Maybe in a year from now on, I'll post an update detailing which seams raveled and which held, because I fully expect to pop more holes in the seams of this plush. And I will document them as they happen. Alright, the holes have been fixed. I've turned its right way out again, and now it's just a matter of putting the stuffing back in. You know, looking at this piece of cloth like this, it really does not look like it should cost 1200 euros. Definitely does not look like that from the inside. After the holes were fixed, it came time to restuff the plush. One of the reasons I wanted to unstuff the plush in the first place was for the sake of answering a few questions I had that I'd love to see in a review before buying this product. Is it difficult to unstuff and restuff the plush? No, not really. The one thing you need to be aware of is that there's an internal wall separating the head from the neck. This wall is fragile and feels just like stuffing when you pull on it, making it easy to rip it apart. I happened to rip mine while unstuffing and turning the plush inside out, which isn't a big deal as it's simple enough to fix with a needle and thread, but you should be aware it's there. It took me 40 minutes to completely unstuff it and 2 hours to restuff it again. For doing this, I found it very useful to use the original box and plastic wrap the plush came with to store the stuffing while I worked on the plush. The box is 320 liters, so that should give you an idea of how much the 8 kilograms of stuffing expands into once taken out of the plush. Putting it into the box also helps to keep the stuffing from getting everywhere. Well, it still got everywhere, but at least it helped. A little bit? Maybe? While you would take stuffing out to wash it, you shouldn't take all of it out. And you most certainly should not wash the plush inside out. Leave stuffing in the difficult to reach places like the hands, toes, and horns, and you will have a much easier time getting it back in again. I was a bit worried that it would be difficult to properly stuff a plush like this, but I feel happy with my first attempt at stuffing it. And this was the first time I'd ever stuffed a plush. I did miss a spot and left a void in the snout, which is the furthest to reach place there is, which sort of mended itself a bit over time, but he's still rather loose there. And I filled the head less firmly than the factory did, which seems to have had the side effect of the stuffing in the horn sliding into the head and making them much softer. To me, these things don't bother me. I prefer him having a soft head instead of a firm one. It's more cuddly. Over time, you can expect him to turn flaccid, parts like his head will sink down and flop around. Luckily, this is easy enough to deal with. All you need to do is push some more stuffing into him and his head will rise back up and be rigid again. As far as I can tell, the stuffing is regular polyester filling, so any local sewing or crafts shop should have suitable filling to fill it up with. Another question you might have is, if it's this easy to stuff the plush, why not ship it unstuffed and save a bit? Well, I don't think you'd actually save anything on it. Shipping from Germany to Norway costs 35 euros for me, and optimistically I might save 20 euros on having it shipped unstuffed, but then I'd also have to buy 8 kilograms of stuffing locally, and I'd most certainly get a way worse price than the factory buying the stuff in bulk commercially would. And sure, it might be 2 hours for me to stuff the plush by hand, but the factory uses a stuffing machine and can probably get it done in a tenth of the time, so there's little to save on the work being done by me. With those numbers in mind, shipping it unstuffed to me would probably cost me more than shipping it stuffed. Having repaired my Winston myself now, there's that deal with Plush Life left to work out. They obviously feel that this isn't the experience that purchasing a plush for them should be like. At the same time, they're a small company. What they have to offer is a discount on my next purchase, and well, I never really intended to buy more than one large plush in the first place, nor do I care much about a couple of €100. So they just feel like empty gestures to me. They also seem to take weeks to respond on emails regarding this matter. I still haven't gotten the €50 reimbursement I was offered in the beginning. But to be fair, this is a part-time job for the person behind it, and they did say they were overworked with their regular job. To me, this feels like an unfortunate situation that can't really be done much with. Does this mean I'm unhappy with my purchase? Not at all. Despite all the problems, my Winston is still the big cuddly dragon plush I've dreamed about for so long, and I genuinely enjoy every cuddle I have with him. If you want one for yourself, then I hope this review has found its way to you before the order period ends and made up your mind. The world really needs more large dragon cuddly plushes out there in it. Right? Yes.